Hey, Algebra 1. So if you're watching this video, you're probably stuck somewhere on Delta Math wondering, how do I multiply a fraction again? How do I divide a fraction again? How do I add, subtract fractions again? Well, this video will help you out here, okay? So as a warm-up, just want to give you a quick little intro with integers here, okay? So the first warm-up problem we have here is -7 plus 3. Getting back to when we had our basic skills review. Remember, when we add fractions or add integers, we want to think of this as we start with -7 and we go to the right 3 places on our number line. That's going to give me, if we think about it, kind of visualize it. If we have our number line out like this, here's -7, here's -6, here's -5, here's -4. So 1, 2, 3 places on our number line. That means we're going to have -4 here. Okay. So for a larger expression where we're adding and subtracting a bunch of integers all at once, we want to root out any sort of subtraction and convert it to addition. So the only subtraction sign we have is between the 7 and the 4 in the second example for -12 plus 7 minus 4 plus 6. So what you want to do is, once again, we keep the number in front of the subtraction sign, we change the sign on the subtraction sign, and we make the 4 a negative. So keep, change, change. So now we just kind of do everything all at once here. Okay, so -12 plus 7, once again, if we visualize it on our number line, this becomes -5, and so -5 plus -4 plus 6. Then we do the next two, -5 plus -4. They're the same sign. We treat them as if they're both positive. Therefore, we subtract, or we add them together as if they're positive. So -5 plus -4 is the same as doing 5 plus 4, which is with the negative sign in front of it. That makes it -9. So -9 plus 6, that makes this -3. So all of this simplifies to -3. Okay? Now, when we add and subtract integers, we already talked about this. Remember, the idea is that we use something called SATs. Okay? And all that really means is that if it's the same sign, we add as if they're both positive, both negative. Okay, if they have different signs, we subtract. Okay? Or we find the difference between the distance between them, basically, is how we find that. Okay? So a couple of examples like we saw before. We add and subtract integers. So for example, let's say we have 7 plus 3. Well, that one's easy because we know that if we add 3 to 7, that gives me 10. Okay? Same thing if I have -5 plus -6. That would give me same as 5 plus 6, but with a negative sign. So that would be -11. Okay? But what if we have different signs? Okay? Let's say, for instance, we have, instead of 7 plus 3, let's say we have 7 minus 3. We have to apply our keep, change, change. Okay? Well, then this becomes plus -3, different sign. That means I'm going to subtract. That's a difference there. So that means it's going to be +4. Same thing right here. If I were to subtract -5 and -6 like this, I want to apply the same rule. I want to apply keep, change, change. So therefore, let's see, I keep the -5 the same, change the subtraction to a positive, change the 6 to a positive. That's going to give me -5 plus 6. That's going to give me a +1 there. Okay? So that's how we apply different rules here for adding and subtracting fractions. Now, the most basic operation for dealing with fractions, believe it or not, is multiplying. Okay? Here's how we would multiply fractions. So for instance, let's say we have 1/2 times 4/5. Something real simple to start us off with here. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're actually going to just multiply straight across. So 1 times 4 and then 2 times 5. Okay? That's going to leave me with 1 times 4 is 4, 2 times 5 is 10. Okay? But we want to remember something. We want to be able to simplify our fractions here. So we look at the factors of 4 and 10 here. They're both even numbers. That means we can divide or reduce by a factor of 2. and see what that gives us. Because they're both even, that's usually a good way to start. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 1/2 of 4/5 is 2/5. Okay? Let's see if we have an even more complicated example. Let's say we have 7/10 times, oh, let's say we have 6/7, something like this. Okay, so two fractions, not improper, real good here. So 7 times 6 gives me 42, and 10 times 7 is 70. Okay, so that's going to, once again, it's going to give me 42 over 70. Now, once again, we want to reduce by common factors here. So a common factor between 42 and 70 is going to be 7. So I'm going to divide both numerator and denominator by 7. Because when we're reducing fractions, we want to make sure whatever we do to the numerator, we also have to do to the denominator here. Okay, so that's going to give me 6 over 10. Okay, well, once again, we're left with two even numbers in our numerator and denominator. Okay, so we're going to want to reduce again. In this case, if we do 6 divided by 10, we're going to reduce again by 2. Because they're both even. So then 6 divided by 2 is 3. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 7/10 times 6/7 will result in 3/5 as my resulting fraction. Okay. For this next example, let's go ahead and take a look at what happens if we have mixed numbers. Okay, so a mixed number is basically something like this. Let's say we have 3.5 times 2/3. Okay, first thing we want to do is we want to convert 3.5 into an improper fraction. The way we do that is we multiply the denominator with the whole number, and then we add in the numerator. So when I do that, I'm left with 3 times 2, and then plus 1 for a numerator all over 2, and then times 2/3. Now, obviously, this is kind of a not organized way to do this. So what I want to do now is I'm going to simplify the numerator on the first fraction. 3 times 2 is 7. I'm sorry, 3 times 2 is 6. I'm getting ahead of myself here. 3 times 2 is 6. Add the 1 there, that gives me 7. Okay, so 7/2 times 2/3. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and simplify here by multiplying out. So 7 times 2 is 14. 2 times 3 is 6. All right, once again, two even numbers. In both numerator and denominator, I'm going to start by reducing by 2. Divide both numerator and denominator by 2. That's going to give me, let's see, 14 divided by 2 is 7. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So 7/3, both 7 and 3 are prime numbers. That means we found our answer. What happens when we multiply 3.5 by 2/3? Another example, let's say we have 4 and 4/5 times 1/10. Okay, so once again, we want to convert the first fraction, first mixed number, into an improper fraction. So we're going to multiply 4 times 5, and then we're going to add that 4 there. When I do that, I get, let's see here, so 4 times 5 plus 4, all divided by 5 times 1/10. All right, so once again, I want to simplify my numerator. So 4 times 5, this becomes 20. 20 plus 4 is 24. So now I've got two real simple fractions that can multiply across the top. So 24/5 times 1/10. Okay, so once again, multiply numerator with numerator, denominator with denominator. I'm combining these two together and these two here. So 24 times 1, well, that's easy. That's just 24. So 24, and then 5 times 10 is 50. All right, once again, two even numbers here. I can go ahead and reduce my fraction by 2, see if that helps me out here. So So 24 divided by 2, that's going to give me 12. And then 50 divided by 2 is 25. 12 divided by 25, or 12/25ths, no common factor exists between 12 and 25. Therefore, this is a completely simplified fraction. Okay. All right, so now we know how to multiply fractions. Now we're going to get into adding and subtracting fractions. The biggest rule about adding and subtracting fractions, very simply, is this. You can only combine when the numerator or the denominators are the same. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of examples of when we can add and subtract fractions, as well as times that you can't, and you have to adjust for that. Okay, so for instance, let's say we have 10 over, let's do it 10 over 13, something weird here, plus 8 over 13. Well, because these both have a denominator of 13, I can go ahead and add 10 to 8. Makes it a little bit easier here. So that's going to give me, so 10 plus 8 is 18, and then divide that, put that over 13 there. So 10 13ths plus 8 13ths gives me 18 13ths. Much like when we combine like terms, if we had 10x plus 8x, that would give me 18x. Okay, another example. Let's say we have, let's try this. Let's go to subtraction now. Let's say we have 6 sevenths minus 4 sevenths. Okay, so once again, they have the same denominator. That means that because I have 7 here and 7 here, I can go ahead and find the difference between 6 and 4, which means that, okay, 6 minus 4 is 2. So then my simplified answer for this is going to be, come on, pen, there we go, it's going to be 2 sevenths. All right, well, what happens if I have two fractions that don't have the same denominator? Okay, let's say I have, for instance, let's say I have 1/2. If I could get it into black, there we go. So 1/2 plus 3/4. Simple example here. Okay, I want to make sure that both of my denominators are the same. And in order to do that, I need to look at my smallest denominator and compare it to my largest one, and look for what's called the least common multiple between the two, or in this case, the least common denominator. So my denominators are 2 and 4. And if we're looking at the common denominators, it's going to be, let's see, so 2, so my multiples of 2 are 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and I can keep going on like that. And then 4 is 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, and so on. And then I look for the first number that they both have in common, which are 4. So 4 is the first number they have in common. That means that I have to multiply my 2 here to get it to look like 4. I have to multiply by 2 in both numerator and denominator. That means when I do that, I'm going to be left with 2 over 4 plus 3 over 4. So now they have the same denominator. I can go ahead and combine my numerators because I have 4 here, 4 here. I can go ahead and add these two together. So 2 plus 3 is 5. And then the 4's stay the same. So 1/2 plus 3/4 is 5/4. Okay. What if we have to subtract? Well, it's no different than what we saw before. You just have to subtract instead of adding. Okay. So let's say, for instance, we have, let's do it this way. Let's say we have 1 and 1/2 minus 2/3. Okay. Now, like we saw before, we need to be able to convert our mixed number into an improper fraction. So once again, we're going to multiply these two and then add the numerator together. That's going to give me an improper fraction of, let's say, 1 times 2 plus 1, all divided by 2, minus 2/3. Okay? So now, let's see. All I got to do is simplify my numerator. 1 times 2 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. Okay? So I'm going to have 3 over 2 minus 2 over 3. All right, so now look at my denominators. They're not the same like we saw at the very beginning. So I got to find common multiples. I got to find my least common multiple between 2 and 3. So let's see. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. I can keep going. And then 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, and so on and so forth. So we want to find the number that's the least in common. So if we compare the two lists here that I've made, I've got 6 and 6. So my least common denominator, my least common multiple is going to be 6. So now we got to ask ourselves, what do I have to multiply 2 and 3 by to get 6's? Well, 2 times, let's see here, so 1, 2, 3, that's going to give me 6. So I'm going to multiply numerator and denominator by 3 times 3 times 3, and I'm going to do the same thing for the second one, where I multiply both numerator and denominator by 2. That's going to leave me with a fraction that looks like this. So 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 2 is 6, minus 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 2 is 6. All right, now they have the same denominator. I can combine them. So 6. There's my 6's. I can just go ahead and do 9 minus 4 or 9 plus negative 4 if we want to do keep, change, change. Either way, you end up with 5, 6 as your answer to the first problem here. Okay, this has just been a review video on how to combine fractions and integers. They're all related here. So make sure you are practicing on Delta Math. Okay. So deltamath.com is where you are probably coming from, but that's okay because this has just been a quick overview of everything you need to know for combining fractions. Make sure you have this video watched as well as our Delta Math assignment complete by the next class. I will see you guys then.